All right, all right. All right, all right, all right. All right. Hello, everyone. You need a sheet? Yeah, you can get one right there. All right. Here's where we are, what we're doing. We're still going to be finishing up discussion of some of the material around that article you read on panoramic fog, and that material will also show up in the textbook as well. And then we're going to be start actually doing data analysis. So we're getting to the part where we're saying, okay, of the many things that influence consumer preferences, prices are one of them, and we're going to be looking at 3 research methods for figuring out how much people value things. The homeworks, let's see, 4 and 5 that you probably haven't started yet, that's all about what value is, meaning when we say consumers value something at $4, it means that that's the maximum amount that they'll pay for it. And we're going to be looking at one way of measuring that today. The homeworks 4 and 5 is about another way of doing it. And then I think it's homework 6 is about a slightly different type of data analysis. So I'm going to show you just real quick some things about homework 6. So these are the assignments we have there. Homework 3 was due today at beginning class, but I'm extending it till midnight tonight. And I think it's pretty straightforward, but just in case it isn't, for homework 6, what we're doing there is, and you're going to see that basically for the main product we're going to use an example is going to be steaks. We tend to use beef a lot. That's what our research is. Oklahoma, we love cows. And so it tends to be the go-to example. But what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, sometimes if we're going to sell a new beef product, we want to know like what price maybe should we charge for it. And to figure that out, we want to know like what are the competing prices out there. Like this, one thing we're going to be looking at is something called a guaranteed tender steak. It's where you take a cattle carcass and you actually use a machine to determine how tender the steak is, because that's really the only way to determine if a steak is tender or not. Well, how much will consumers pay for this? Well, one thing you can do is just get data on the prices of kind of high-end value steaks and set your prices from there. But what are those prices? We're going to be using a real data set where people went to a bunch of grocery stores in Dallas, Oklahoma, and Denver, and they collected a whole bunch of data, and you're going to use pivot tables to answer certain questions about it. And y'all did pivot tables in 3213 probably. Do you remember pivot tables? The name's not ringing a bell then, right? Okay. You probably did it once. You've just forgotten what the name is. Either way, it's really easy. This is one of the best tools, one of the most important tools in Excel that you can know. And so what I have here, I have one video here that shows you how to use pivot tables. And it gives you the answers to half of the homework 6 questions. But it shows you how to use the pivot tables. And then the rest of homework 6 is using it to answer some other questions. I think it's pretty straightforward, but what I would do, I would print out the hard copy first, and I would look through the videos and answer the questions as you watch the videos, and then later open up the quiz to actually put in answers. And do know one thing you're going to have to do, you're going to have to make a really clear and attractive chart, and you're supposed to make it almost as identical to mine as possible. One thing that's really important to me is that you leave this class knowing how to make really good charts. Because in that real world, the most data analyses that are done, they're really simple analyses and they're communicated through just really good graphs. And so, you know, in there, there's a video where I show you how you change the font and how you make sure it's like a black font that's bold, how you get rid of grid lines, things like that. And just remember, I want you to basically have an identical graph to the one I have. And you want to make sure you know how to do it, because on your test, everybody's going to have a unique data set to use, and they're going to have to make a graph from us. You're really going to have to know how to do this. But I think it's pretty straightforward. So, but I would definitely just print out the hard copy and work on it. Don't just open the quiz and think you can go from question 1. You probably can, but you know, it may take you an hour, and what if Canvas times out? Things like that. I just think it'll be easy for you. Okay. All right. For taking notes and stuff, I gave out handouts. Anybody come in a little late and didn't get a handout? I've got the handouts where we can mostly take notes on today. And so you have been for, I don't know, homework. I think the homework that was due today, you were supposed to read the part of the textbook that talks about the senses, right? Aromas, taste, things like that. So you learned about like the 5 different type of taste buds, sensations, the way aroma works, things like that. All of that stuff is, you probably knew, seems obvious, but it's just something when you're developing food products you want to really think a lot about. And what I want to do on this first question, describe the cross-modal relationship Dr. Norwood experiences. So you've seen this guy's show, right? The diners drives in, he goes into these places that look like dumps, and they just have these delicious meat-filled foods. And what I think all you need to know there, for number one, I want to make sure you understand the word cross-modal and what it is. I didn't ask about it on homework 3, so C-R-O-S-S-M-O-D-A-L. And that's when a change in one of the senses, like sight, changes one of the other senses, like flavor. The one big example that I told you before I would usually do, you can take a drink with a certain sugar content and you could just put red food coloring in it. And if the person doesn't know you did that, it will taste sweeter to them than if the red food coloring was not in there. So the changing of the color, the appearance, changed the flavor. It changed how you perceive the taste bud sensations. And so that's a cross-modal. Modal like a type of sense, and cross how one sense impacts another. And you know, you can imagine how different aromas would affect how you taste things. The thing about the doctor's office, I usually go like once a month to get allergy shots at Dr. English's office, and you have to wait around 20 minutes there. And your doctor's office is not, it's not a nice place to be. People are sick and they're sneezing. The smell, it's hospital smell, you know. But they're always showing that diners, drive-in, and what is it? Diners, dives, and drive-in, right? And so they're always showing these delicious meat sandwiches there every time. And so I've got 2 things going on at the same time. One, there's a sensory overload that's making me lose my appetite. People sneezing, kids with snot all over their face. But then you have these delicious sandwiches on TV. And sometimes I associate those 2 settings so much that sometimes when I'm eating like maybe a really big hamburger, something with a lot of meat, I think about the doctor's office. And and it kind of makes me, I mean, do I look like someone who loses their appetite? I don't lose my appetite, but I kind of eat less than I normally would. It's just an association I think about. And so we just bring out that to highlight and the importance of how one sense can affect another, which is why restaurants will spend so much time and money creating the perfect atmosphere for their food, and why food companies spend so much time coming up with the best product label, because those things matter. So the important thing there is cross-modal. And you know, this is a picture that you had to talk about or answer some questions in homework 3. But this is, when it comes to actually developing new food products and figuring out how to market them, this is one of the most important things you could actually know. And like a lot of things in this class, it's obvious. Like you probably know it's obvious that the way you expect something to taste influences how you actually taste it. And how you remember things taste and influences how you taste them in other things. So whenever you're coming to a food and you go to eat it, first you have this expectation. And one thing that's going to be very important for your project is getting a good idea of how to set up expectations correctly. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But then you go these external factors like what is your mood, what is the setting, what are the things around you, what are smells, is the appearance and aroma of the food itself, taste bud sensations, sounds matter, there's aroma sensations. And the cool thing, interesting thing about aromas, so you've seen there's only really like 5 different types of taste bud sensations. There's actually 6. They're now thinking there's one called fat, but you don't need to know it. That fat has its own taste bud sensations. But the reason food has just endless variety of flavors is mainly because of the aromas. There's only a few taste bud sensations that you can perceive, but there's a limit, basically infinite number of aromas you can detect. And the aromas dictate your preferences for things far more than you think. There's even been a lot of studies that shown that your preferences for a boyfriend or girlfriend is influenced a lot by smell. And flavor is when all those things come together. And so flavor is not physiological, it's psychological. Certainly physiological things matter. The actual food that hits your actual taste buds and the working of those in the nerve endings. But food is psychological. And it's very important to remember that. All right. What we're doing now, this is continuing on the slides that we were doing on Wednesday of 2 weeks ago. Remember, we were talking about the local foods movement, and we were talking about how people have certain preferences for local foods, but they might not really understand why they have those preferences. We were talking about the panoramic fog, we were talking about tunnel vision, and what naughty word did we use? You can say it. Say it. Say it. Bullshit, all right? It was a technical thing. And then we started talking about what is it that people, where do these beliefs that we have come from? And we remarked how a lot of times we don't really understand how a lot of our political beliefs come from, sometimes our religious beliefs, our beliefs about food ethics, and so and so. And we didn't get to this, but now we're here, and we're at this thing called a web of belief. And there's like 2 whole pages in the textbook all about the web of belief. And the idea here is that the beliefs you pretend to hold, the things you believe in true, they're determined partly by the other beliefs you possess. So you tend to adopt new beliefs when they're coherent with other beliefs. Because you have all these other beliefs to be true, if this one's consistent with it, well then it checks out. That makes sense, right? But we also curate beliefs, meaning we deliberately choose which beliefs we'll hold to be true so that they are consistent with a bunch of other beliefs we have. And so what we wanted to, and the reason this can be important is because if you're marketing to a consumer, and maybe you're marketing something like, we'll be talking about gluten-free foods a lot pretty soon, or local foods, organic foods, Oklahoma-raised foods, something like that, and we want to market to them. We want to say, okay, why would they believe this to be a good food, and what are the other beliefs associated with that, because that will help you market towards them. And so what I have here on this number 2 here, I have web of beliefs for a local voice. So what we want to do is we want to say, for someone who's really big into local foods, meaning they love going to the farmer's market, they like doing community-supported agriculture. That's when you buy a share of a farm's output and they just mail you whatever they happen to harvest that month. And when you go in a grocery store, if there's a local food section, you tend to purchase those. So what are some other things? How would we describe a person like that? What are some other things they may believe in? And that doesn't have to be food related, though it can. You're marketing to them, so you're saying, what do these people like? It's okay to stereotype in instances like this. You have to with marketing. What about the politics? Yeah, I think so. You know, so what she says, they want food to be more natural. And so I would agree with you. I think a lot of the people would respond more to the natural label. You know, you have the idea that they see the conventional food system, they might use the word industrial food system, and they might say it's not real food. And so they want something local because they believe it's more naturally produced. So that can be A. Natural foods are better. We don't have to define what natural is. Which grocery store would they be most likely to go to in town if they had to go to one? Say it loud. Right. I think Sprouts. Y'all think Sprouts? Okay. So more likely to go to specialty grocery stores, even if it's not local. You know, the Sprouts says, like, what did they say? Your local farmer's market or something? But the only thing local in there is the beer from Iron Monk Brewery. But it seems, so why are they going there then? Yeah, they might think it's local, but why would they? Well, it does say, like, it says farmer's market, doesn't it? It doesn't say local. So, yeah, yeah. And when you go in the store, what's different about the inside of the store compared to Walmart? A lot more vegetables and stuff, right? Okay, so do you think a locavore, there was one person in here who's kind of like me who eats no vegetable, almost eats no vegetables. Who were they? It was a guy, of course. That was you, right? Okay. I'm kind of with it. You know, Jim Gaffigan once said, nobody actually ate vegetables until they invented ranch dressing. Because they didn't know what to do with the vegetables before then. And that's why people painted so many pictures of fruits and vegetables. They didn't know what else to do with it. But then once we have ranch dressing, well, then you've got a decent way to eat it. And I'm kind of like that. But I know a good many locavores, and they love vegetables. They love greens. They love chard and broccoli. And just anything green with the less nutritional, the more water's in it, the more they like it. So yeah, I'd say they really love fruits and vegetables. They tend to be more plant-based diets. That makes sense to me. What about you? So you think they're more likely to be vegetarian? Yeah. Well, why are they choosing to be vegetarian? What are their beliefs about animal production? Yeah, they probably think, and what? Say it louder.
There's like health risks regarding eating red meat.
Yeah, I think both of those. They're going to believe vegetables are healthier than lots of meats in general, and they probably believe standard livestock production is unethical. So what kind of meat will they buy? Yeah, they probably like grass-fed beef better. Now, is grass-fed beef always more ethical? I mean, you can put a bunch of cows in a feedlot and just give them hay, and that's grass-fed beef. But yeah, we're describing this person pretty well. Now, you don't want to stereotype too much. On the other hand, let's take that opposite of that kind of person who might also like local food. So this other person loves meat. And so okay, let's ask this. What kind of conservative would be more likely to really like local foods? What would they be like? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, some people who live in rural areas may have a greater affinity for where they're from because they know more people. And do you know what I mean by homesteaders? Okay. A homesteaders is the kind of person who just loves raising lots of their food on their own. Prepper kind of people. So yeah, they're in their garage, they've got lots of ammunition and things like that, but they're also raising their own food. And you see this with local food movements. You tend to have lots of liberal people who may be really vegetarian, but then you can also have very conservative people who are really into guns and stuff like that. But that other person, they're kind of like prepper people. You know what I mean by prepper? Okay. Now we're just really stereotyping people, aren't we? But a lot of times that's what market research is. You're just trying to learn about people. And you're trying to figure out what are all these beliefs that come together to make them who you are. One, so you can market to them in an unethical way if that's what you want to do, or to help them figure out what kind of food's best for them. Okay, so all I want you to do there is we just have this one thing called local foods. It could be something like gluten-free. It could be beef jerky or something like that. And you're thinking about all the other views that these people hold that are consistent with those beliefs. That's kind of nuanced, but does that make sense? Then we have this thing called, okay, we have people who will we say they're developing beliefs and truths, not necessarily because they know what they're doing, but because it's useful to them. And that gets to something you read about called the pragmatic view of truth, where the things we believe to be true are true because they're useful to us. And useful may sound strange. How can a belief in local foods be useful? Okay, I'll give you an example. This will help because this is, you understand this better than you think. It's just professors use different words than you often do. Okay. Anybody here like beer? Okay, the two guys will. What about, we all drink White Claw? What's your name up there? Bryce? Yeah, if you don't eat vegetables, you're not going to drink White Claw, right? What about you? What's your name? Stephen? White Claw? Well, I will never drink White Claw. It's probably good. I love beer, and there's probably nothing wrong with White Claw, but I see memes like this. I'm bombarded by memes that tell me men don't drink White Claw. And I was raised by the fact, did you ever see the drink Zima? You ever heard of that? It was White Claw before White Claw. And I don't think they make them anymore, but I always grew up, my dad making fun of people who drank Zima. And so I've got it just instilled in me that men don't drink White Claw. Now, what if it had been the case that Stone Cold actually likes White Claw, and whenever he vanquished his opponent, they threw him White Claws to drink? You think my views would change then? You bet. If Stone Cold Steve Austin says it's okay, it's okay. So why is, and isn't that ridiculous when you think about it? Isn't that a ridiculous way to form preferences? So why do I do that? Yeah. I mean, it's very social, it's very cultural. Is that useful to me? And so, yeah, it's so many things we do, they're useful in the way that it's socially useful to us. My friends are kind of the same way. We make fun of White Claw. It gives us a way to bond. It gives me jokes I can tell. Things like that. And you know, a lot of the truths we hold about food can be this way. Our views on politics can be this way. So this idea that a lot of the views we hold, we take which ones that are useful to us. That sounds like we're silly people who have no real principles on which we stand. But really they do serve us well in certain ways. And if you think about it, most of the truths we hold, we have to take that way because we can't go out and scientifically verify whether the vast majority of the things we believe to be true. Okay, so I think you're kind of getting how, like, the local foods movement, you can be a big-time advocate for it, not really understand all the nuances of local food, but it still be a really big part of your life. And so that the philosopher we cited would call it bullshit. And I think if we think closer, a lot of our preferences for so many things are like that. Fashion, cars and trucks. Sometimes there's just not a lot underpinning else. Sometimes there is. Is anybody here type 1 diabetic? Well, they have very rational reasons for avoiding lots of sugar. And this is partly one reason why food becomes so political. When you survey people about whether we should label genetically modified food, so you give them a survey question, you say, should we label food that has GM ingredients? About 90% of Americans say yes. And there's been tons of surveys showing this. So in that sense, it seems like all of America wants to label GM foods. I know in the ag college, we kind of think that's silly. We understand GM foods more than other people. And great, there are still people in the ag college who want to label it, and they have some reasons. But in general, our views tend to be different. But most Americans, when you ask them in a survey question, they say, yes, we should label GM foods. But then California went and voted on it. Anybody from California? There's got to be some, yeah. Raise your hand high so I can see. Okay. Are y'all in the red counties? Okay. Where are you from? Okay. Okay. Well, you know, there is no one California. Right? And so they actually voted on this. That was Prop 37. So this was in 2008, I think. And what were you, like 8 years old? What's that? Okay. Okay. And the whole proposition was about should we label genetically modified foods. And it did not pass. And it ended up being very political. So what we have here, the people in yellow here voted against Prop 37. So they're the ones saying, we don't need to label genetically modified food. And that's in the red states. Those tend to be very conservative states. They send their children to Oklahoma State instead of Berkeley. And we love them. And then in red here, the people who voted for Mitt Romney instead of Barack Obama. So 93% of the counties that voted for Mitt Romney also voted against Prop 37. So how were they making this decision Why do we get these two conflicting things? How are they making the decision about whether GM food should be labeled? Or why were so many of those people saying yes to the survey question? Survey question, do you think we should label genetically modified or foods containing genetically modified ingredients? Why would so many people say yes when they wouldn't vote for it? Yes, you're saying they might not actually know what they think or know what it is. Yeah, they might not. One of my friends actually did a survey where, and y'all are some of the few students who will get this, where he asked people in a survey, do you think we should label food containing DNA? And I think it was like 80% of people said yes. Well, that's ridiculous, right? And so what are these people doing? They didn't understand that all food has to contain DNA, right? They didn't know what DNA was. But then why would you be asking about it in a survey unless it was dangerous? Do we do surveys about whether people should drink water or not? Do you believe people should drink water? Have you ever seen that survey question? Just the mere asking of the question, it provokes people to answer in a certain way. The mere asking of the question suggests that it is harmful. And they don't know better, right? And we're not making fun of them. There's lots of survey questions I could get that I wouldn't know very well, and I wouldn't have an informed opinion. So what changed here? Why don't these people, when they go to the ballot, what's different about that context? So in the first question, their information, they inferred from the survey question, GM ingredients are bad, perhaps because why else would they be asking about it? But now when they go on the ballot, what other types of information is coming into them? Say it again? Yeah, there's more details. What kind of details are they going to get? Now let's don't give our voters too much credit. Now some of them may actually go and look up what it is and stuff, right? But where's most people information about what to do going to come from? Facebook, what'd you say? Advertisements. AM radio, talk shows. You're going to see, if you're going to see what people of your political affiliation believe about this. And you're going to say, okay, I'm liberal. This is what the liberals are saying. This is what conservatives are saying. If I've got to choose one, I'm going to go with the liberals because that's the kind of person I am. Conservatives doing the other thing. That's saying I don't really know what to do here. I don't understand all the nuances, but my values, my beliefs about other things tend to be more affiliated with conservatives. So if they're saying vote against it, I should probably vote against it. That makes some sense, right? All right, quick quiz about some of the philosophers we studied. Well, I've got it says which of the philosophers associated with this, but that's a dead giveaway. But part of that is to show that it was Nietzsche who came up with the whole Superman thing. He's the one who gave us Superman. But here's another one. It's not a lie if you believe it. I don't expect you to actually remember these. We're kind of reviewing, so just guess. You don't like doing wrong guesses, do you? Say something, and I'll tell you. Just pick a name. Wrong. William James, yeah. He was the pragmatic philosopher. You believe what's useful to you. It's not a lie if you believe it. This dude was an actual Nazi. Pick out the Nazi name. No, we've already used him, and they'll only appear once. Nietzsche was German, though. Heidegger. So you're actually studying actual Nazis. I hope you're proud of yourself. Father of economics. Ah, there you go. Adam Smith. Father of phenomenology. We only got one left. Who did we leave out? Husserl, yes. Persecuted by the Nazis. Okay. What we're doing now is we're going to go into detail, and we're going to be answering number 3 there. Going into detail, talking about the use of sight, almost all sight, in the design of labels. Have y'all been to, anybody eating at the Smoky Pokey? So it's at when you go down 51, where it intersects with I-35, you've got the Smoky Pokey there. They have typical Oklahoma food. And what kind of bar do they have there? Pickle bar. Lots of different types of pickles. Some are, what we have there, some are sweet pickles, some are sour dill pickles, some are hot pickles, some are salty pickles, and they don't have a seafood flavored one, but I'm just putting that there for us to explore. And suppose that you're looking at one of these, suppose they don't have one of these varieties, but you're looking at doing one of them for your project. And you want to make sure, you want to say, okay, what kind of label do we need to make sure that people understand what it's going to taste like? Because remember, one thing you saw in your readings is that, I don't know if you remember the ice cream example, but there was a guy who came up with a crab-flavored ice cream. And it was pink. And when people have ice cream, they expect it to taste sweet. But crab is not sweet. And so they tasted it, and they immediately tasted crab, and they were revolted because it wasn't what they expected. But once he gave it a different name that suggested it had a savory and not a sweet taste, people were more receptive to it. They said, okay, this is different. Now I'll taste it, and I'll be more open to it. So what we're trying to do is make sure people's expectations of the product conforms to reality, because that's more likely to give us a good eating experience. Okay, and suppose we want sweet pickles, and we want to design our label such that people know that it's probably going to be sweet. And yes, you can say sweet, but and you probably want to do that, but we're going beyond that, because we're not just machines that read words and infer it. We respond to colors and we respond to shapes, and that's what we're concentrating on here. Colors and shapes. If we want people to know this thing's going to be sweet, what colors may we want to use? Red and pink, because those colors are associated with sweetness.
What about red being associated with hot?
Could go that too. And so what you're saying, red is also associated with hot, and it is. And so let's think, McDonald's, what's their colors of their restaurant? Red and yellow. What about Sonic? Yeah. What about Burger King? Red and yellow. Chili's? What does Chili's have as an object in there, in addition to red? And I don't know if they have red and yellow or not. They have a pepper, right? And so you can have other things have an indicator there. Yep. So yeah, for the sweet pickles, we might want to have the colors red and pink on there. Suppose we're thinking of a logo, or we're choosing the type of fonts that we want. What do we want in terms of the shapes to signify sweetness? I'll give you two choices, roundness or angularity. Roundness. Roundness tends to be associated with sweetness. I don't understand exactly why, but it does. Let's see, the Cadbury chocolate one time, they changed the shape of their chocolate so it had more sharp edges to it, and they started having calls in from their consumers saying that they changed the recipe and they didn't like it. They didn't change the recipe at all. They just changed the shape of the candy bar. But people thought it was less sweet because it was less rounded. Yeah, so that's all we need. Sweet pickles, red, pink, and roundness. So maybe a very round font or some kind of logo that has roundness to it. We just don't want pointy things. Sour dill pickles. And to cheat, you want to look on page 3. Yeah, yellow and green for sourness. And then what kind of shapes for not sweet? If you choose between, and the choice is always going to be just roundness or angular. Angular pointy. If you want non-sweet, you do something different than rounded, basically. There's probably way different. That people done research on how different shapes are associated with different things, but the findings aren't quite as clear as they are for colors. So what about hot pickles? We kind of already talked about that. Well, there's no hot on the list there, right? And so you got to think of something else. And what does chilies do? They have a chili. And so that's an instance where, in addition to saying hot, you may want some other kind of object that signifies hot, like a chili or something like that. Salty, what colors? Blue and white, that's what they say. Now, do know, so on testing something, those are always the colors we associate with things. So those are like the answers. But of course, in the real world, things are more complex. You can have a product that tastes sweet, and you can find an innovative way to market it using different colors, because sometimes you want to stand out. If every other person has a sweet product that is with red logos, maybe you want something different. But these are just some basic facts that we start with to come up with ideas about what labels should look like. Okay, so what would you, and here you can think beyond shapes and colors, if you had a pickle that tasted like a seafood item and you wanted consumers to know that, but you don't want to, it wouldn't be very innovative to say, call it pickles that taste like seafood, right? That's just lazy. So you got to come up with something kind of clever. You got any clever thoughts? Here's one way to think. Suppose pickles, if pickles really somehow naturally tasted like seafood, maybe you'd get them the same way, by harvesting them like you would oysters. So it's kind of a cute, silly, somewhat stupid way of making pickles sound like you went out and harvested them from the ocean. I know someone's got an idea, y'all just hate to talk. Sea pickles, something like that. Sea pickles, pickles under the sea. Just something like that. And so, you know, on exam 1, there'll be a question that's like something like this, and you do have to use your creativity. And the important thing is, there's an endless number of answers to any of these things, but you just got to really justify it well and describe why you're designing a label that way with certain colors or with certain shapes. That's what's important. You're communicating to consumers, but you don't communicate like a robot because people want something more. They want cleverness. They want cuteness. Is Kaylee Brassfield here? Okay, Kaylee. So for Kaylee, for her project, she's thinking that the project she wants to look at is a new variety of an existing product where the Starbucks you go ahead and you buy, it's already in the glass jar. It's not a fresh one from the Starbucks store. But they already have flavors like vanilla, vanilla light, coffee, mocha, caramel. And they're starting to include new ones, things like toasted white chocolate. And Kaylee, like me, loves the taste of coconut. Are you a big Almond Joy Mounds fan too? Yes, me too. I do a lot of work at the food pantry, Our Daily Bread, and they get lots of candy leftovers, right? And sometimes you get these big boxes of Almond Joys and Mounds, and I'll have a whole drawer in my refrigerator just full of those things. Because you don't give those to the people at the food pantry. You're not supposed to give them candy. And so we keep them for ourselves. So it works out. So she's thinking of a Starbucks bottled Frappuccino that has an extra boost of caffeine and has a coconut flavor to it. And that's the prototype. So, you know, all she knows is that it's going to be kind of like those other Starbucks, but it's going to have coconut flavoring to it and some more caffeine. She doesn't know yet whether it's going to be really coconutty or just a little. That's part of what the research would be. You know, how do some people respond when it's really coconutty and how do people respond when it's just a little bit? She doesn't know yet what a label would look like or anything. This is just something I just Googled Starbucks and coconut. So they have this drink you can get at the store. Have you ever had that at the store? Okay. So some places they have this coconut drink, and it's also flavored with the dried husk of coffee beans. Good way to take stuff they were going to throw away and make a product out of it. So let's help Kaylee think. So if she's designing some kind of label for this product, she wants people to know it's got a coconut flavor to it. And of course, you'll have the word coconut there. But you don't want to just say that, right? You want to go more. Oh, and she did, which I thought was kind of a good idea. She was thinking blue colors since coconut is a refreshing flavor. Now, if we look up blue on our little thing, it would say blue makes you think of saltiness. Now, the choice of blue is neither good or bad. It depends on how you do it. What are some reasons blue would be a good color to use with a coconut drink? Yeah, I know. You know, when I think of coconuts, I think of the time I've been to Cayman Islands and Belize and Costa Rica, and that water was just so beautiful blue. I mean, you could see right through it. And it was just gorgeous. And so, yeah, I mean, having the color blue to make you think of that, I think makes a lot of sense. What about saltiness? Is there any reason making people blue saltiness would be good? The ocean salty. That's something I thought of, yeah. And so, you know, actually I like the idea of the of the blue colors there. So let's help with some more. So, does anyone know how you would describe the taste of coconut? I don't, so maybe you can help me.
It's not really a nutty flavor.
Yes, not nutty, definitely. Yeah, I think so too. What's something that kind of has an aroma kind of like coconut? Sunscreen, yeah. I don't know. I was kind of thinking mint, but I don't know. Like when I eat coconut and when I eat mint, they both. So I keep doing that. They both have this kind of freshness to it, and so coconut really does seem. It does seem fresh to me. She said, I think coconut could be sufficient by itself as far as describing it, but she was also thinking of cream of coconut. So help her, when you think cream of coconut, what does that make you think of? Soup? Smooth? Yeah. I was thinking, so smooth and soupy. Is soupy good or bad? I mean, there's no one answer to this. You wouldn't want it? Yeah. I mean, I could say the first thing I think of when I think cream of mushroom soup, and then I think of nasty casseroles at a First Baptist church. Those are the first things that came to mind. But then for some other people, you know, creamy is it's rounded, it's smooth. So maybe, you know, if anything, instead of cream of coconut, creamy coconut. That might be better.
It's refreshing too. You can call it a coconut refresher or something like that.
Yeah? You know, having the word refresh in there? Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, if you're like us two and you, or maybe it was you, and you tend to really think about the aroma of coconut, you know, it might be somehow you can emphasize that there. Do y'all know I think we mentioned this before, the famous, the one Oklahoma dish that I think Oklahoma contributed to the world, the paladone? Do y'all know what that is? It's like the Frito pie. You start with the corn chips, and you start piling a whole bunch of stuff on it. Y'all don't know that? Well, in some versions, they put coconut on it too. So it's like corn chips, chili, salsa, cheese, and then sometimes coconut shavings. Here's that Starbucks logo. What do y'all think when y'all look at this nice lady? What's that? Can you louder?
Oh, I love Starbucks.
Yeah, so, you know, you probably just look at it, you just have immediately a fondness for it right away, don't you? Yeah. What are the shapes there? What's that? Yeah, there certainly is some angular right there, right? You notice most beers have a logo with a star on it somehow. Like if you look closely, a lot of beers have the stars on it. And food people say that's, you know, because beers are sparkly carbonated, and so that's associated with angular shapes. But then what about these lines? Are they rounded or angular? And who has eyebrows like that? Well, I see angles up top, and I mean, I see more roundness right there. And so you have a mixture of both. And so when we say roundness means one thing and angularity means another, again, that's just a place where we start building it. The people who put together these logos, you know, when you finally get what you think, it's not like you can say, well, I chose this shape because of so-and-so and this shape because of so-and-so. It's art. It's instinctual, it's intuitive, so you're not supposed to be able to explain anything. But tell me, but they're also there for a reason. Why green? I mean, I don't know. Whatever product you end up using, you are going to have to figure out a way of thinking about how people are going to respond to your label, to the colors, to the letters, everything about it. Is there something you can do to this lady to kind of give it a coconut feel to her? Can you make her Caribbean? Yeah, I mean, you've already got green there, right? There's something you could do, yeah. But maybe you don't want to mess with a label that's so well known. So when Kaylee, when she's trying to figure out like what the labels and colors and stuff she looks like, what do you think she should do? How do you get people's reaction to it? Well, let me ask you this. How did we know, and I've said this example several times, how did we know that red is associated with sweetness? The experiment I do in class sometimes. I take a drink and add what to it? Red food coloring. And people perceive it as what? Sweeter. Okay. So I would give some people, it would be, you know, sometimes it might be clear, and I ask, how sweet is this to you on a scale of 1 to 10? And then other people, they get the same drink, it just has red food coloring in it. How sweet is it to you? Same scale, 1 to 10. But they're going to rate it as being more sweet. So this was not an instance when we asked people, do you associate red with sweetness? We had to infer it based on people's reaction. And so Kaylee, you know, one thing she could do is maybe you have two different prototype designs. One is a very basic one where you just have slightly different colors, maybe a coconut there, but you don't add too much to it, right? It's pretty standard. You have the word coconut there. But then maybe on the other one, you actually give the nice lady there some scuba goggles or something like that. You make her obviously Caribbean. And you bring in subjects and you have some people, and you put them in different rooms where they don't know they're different bottles. Some people taste it in one bottle, and some people taste the exact same recipe in another bottle. And then you ask them how much they like it, whether there was too much coconut, whether it was too radical, whether it needed more coconut, whether they would be willing to buy it, and you actually get their reaction to it. And so for like you know, On your paper, Kaylee, you shouldn't expect to do everything. Like you don't necessarily have to say, I'm going to evaluate 10 different recipes, 10 different labels, 10 different marketing campaigns. What you can do is you can say, okay, what I'm going to mainly concentrate on is I'm going to take this recipe we have and I'm going to have people evaluate the labels. And you design a questionnaire for them to answer about what they perceive when they taste it. And then maybe you also do a focus group where you actually have a discussion about what people think of the label. That's what you're doing with it. And so you may not, even though you've got a new product, you may not evaluate a different recipe. But then you may kind of do something opposite. You may say, okay, I've got a pretty good idea what I want the label to look like, colors, I can justify it really well. What I want to do is figure out how much coconut should be in it. And so here I'm going to give some people the bottle with the recipe with a little coconut, and I'm giving other people the exact same bottle, the exact same logo, the exact same colors with more coconut in it. And you ask them how much they like it, and you take the data and you figure out what it should look like from there. But either way, whatever you're doing, there's no right or wrong about how it should look. You know, you may put together a logo that I kind of think's ugly and I don't like it, but that doesn't count off. What's important is how well you justify it. Does that make sense? And so we've already come up with some good reasons why blue makes a lot of sense. All right. What should we do now? Should we cut our losses here, or should we can start something, but we'll only be able to get a little bit. You just cut off. Okay. We'll stop here. I'll see you Wednesday.